Okay, this week on Podcasting Them Softly, we are happy to have with us the man, Edward Neumeier, who is the author of, or the co-author of, RoboCop, Starship Troopers. He's even tackled Big Snakes in the Jungle with Anacondas, Hunt for the Blood Orchid. He directed Starship Troopers 3, and there's another Starship Troopers out too at the moment, or coming out. Starship Troopers, the Traitors of Mars. Podcast Them Softly is happy to have with us Edward Neumeier. Ed, how are you doing, sir?
Very good. Nice intro, man. I really appreciate it. It makes my career sound better than it is.
So anyway, before we get into the meat of it, and I promise not too many RoboCop questions because you're probably RoboCopped out, aren't you?
Well, it's okay. It's like having a good friend that visits you every now and again.
Okay. But before we get to the part where, and I'm paraphrasing yourself in the documentary Flesh and Steel, where you come on and you say, I was an executive at Universal Pictures and I hated my job, so I quit and wrote a screenplay. Before we get to that part, can you tell us a little bit about how you came, to your, obviously your enjoyment of films and your origins before that?
Sure. I was very lucky to grow up in Marin County, California, which is north of the San Francisco, of the Golden Gate Bridge, as we say, and lovely town, almost like for the Americans out there, it's almost like Mayberry, a picturesque little town, and I think I was lucky that I had, good teachers and parents who were interested in things like art and, interested in the world and interested in travel, and so I got a kind of an unusual upbringing in some ways that way, because I was encouraged to sort of be myself and think what I thought and to come up with something interesting. What I didn't realize for a long time, because I just kind of left it out, was what was, kind of like really unusual about where I grew up, San Anselmo, was when I was in high school, there was a guy living there who made a movie called American Graffiti.
Oh.
And George Lewis. And it's shot in San Rafael, and I had like friends who were in it. And now I'm coming along, and I really want to make movies, but it's really far away from me. Hollywood is in another part of the state, and might as well be thousands of miles away. But there's movies being made right around me. And Coppola was in the city, and then I went off to first year of college or so, and I was working on a newspaper there, and into the newspaper comes the announcement of this movie, Star Wars.
Ooh.
And I didn't put it together with Lucas. But the pictures were amazing to me because it just immediately looked like the world I would accept and that I wanted to go see. And then the movie came out, and I was, 19 years old, and had always wanted to be in the movie business. And it was made in San Anselmo. I mean, the post-production was done in San Anselmo. Two blocks from my house, he lived. Wow. And, I've never met him, but he was kind of suddenly all around me. And I think that was important because I think it said to me, hey, someone someone who went out and made some movies. It's doable. And that propelled me to go down to Los Angeles, go to the UCLA Film School. And when I got out, I sort of became a reader for several different studios, which was a decent enough job so you could live. And eventually I was an executive for a little while. And I don't know if I hated it. I never thought I was very good at it. I thought the other people around me were better at it.
Right.
The skill set. And I particularly wanted to kind of concentrate on one thing. When you're an executive, you're always juggling a bunch of things.
Right.
So I started writing this idea I had that I've been working on for a long time, really. About 4 years I've been thinking about it for RoboCop. And right around the time I was executive, I ran into a guy who wanted to write and direct, Michael Miner, and we got to talking, and we decided to join forces with this story I had going.
Mm.
And, we wrote the script, and somebody bought it, and it rather quickly came together, although there were many ups and downs, and suddenly we had a movie, and it was a movie people liked, and I was a screenwriter. It was like, now what do I do? You know, but that's how that happened. You know, making RoboCop was, as all movies are, incredibly difficult, and you can probably sit around with a bunch of people who make movies and they'll just talk about, well, my movie was even harder. But I think all movies, big and small, are difficult, you know, things to undertake, and maybe good movies are a little harder than others, but I'm not sure.
Sure. Well, RoboCop certainly became more than just a great film. It became a franchise with a couple of sequels, a TV series, an animated series, which I remember for a little while, a remake, or a reboot, or a reimagination recently, and a rather compelling documentary, which I'm looking forward to seeing, RoboDoc. So it's really become its own little industry.
Yeah, those guys are great.
Yeah, I've seen, I've been following it, so and I see that you are participating in it. Yes.
I think it happened because they came to town and they interviewed me for some reason for a little movie that they were doing about a movie called Fright Night.
Okay.
Directed by Tom Holland. And when I was working on RoboCop, my girlfriend worked for Tom Holland.
Okay.
So I was on the set Fright Night a couple times, and I think that brought them to me for some reason. And then I took them out to dinner and said, why don't you guys do a RoboCop documentary? And my God, they listened to me, and they did. So I hope it's good.
Yeah, it looks. I mean, they've got pretty much. It looks like they
got everybody, which was fascinating to me, and they've taken it quite seriously. I got to on the day they interviewed me, I got to meet S.C. Nimitz. Again, I hadn't seen him for a long time. Bixby Snyder, and boy, that was worth the price of admission right there.
Right. Did they end up getting Peter Weller?
You know, I don't know if they did. Peter's a little funny about that. He doesn't want to talk about RoboCop anymore.
Right.
He says, and I said, you know, Peter, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I like Peter. He's a good guy, and he's done all he has. He doesn't have to give anything more to RoboCop, I say.
No, he's done his bit. But how did you feel about the what should we call it? Is it a reboot or a reimagination or a?
It was a remake. Yeah, it was officially a remake. Yeah. Well, you know, on the one hand, I was lucky enough to be, thanks to the Writers Guild, they gave my partner and I credit on it, which was just very nice because it was, you know, it was some money you didn't think you were going to get.
Right.
I went around and I used the occasion to meet everybody on it, and kind of like you are with me here, I sort of interviewed them about how they experienced working on the remake.
Right.
And a little secret for you guys is that after a movie is made, the filmmakers desperately want to talk about it.
Right.
They just desperately need to talk about this horrible thing that they had gone through, because it's usually really difficult. And so I was very sympathetic to them, and I had a very good experience with them. I was not like, you know, I didn't hate the movie. It wasn't the movie it's not the kind of thing I do, because it wasn't funny really in the way I wanted to be, and I have very specific feelings about the character and what you should and shouldn't do with him, and they didn't have the same feelings. I was, for instance, in the original, I knew that the wife and kid were not going to be much fun to have around, so I just had them go away. And they invested half the story in them, and I think they paid the price because it's just so unpleasant, you know. Right. But other than that, I'm sorry it didn't do better for them, because I don't think the world needs less RoboCop movies, but you know, apparently made a little money, and so sometimes I hear them talking about, well, maybe we should make another one, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah. I don't know if they'll make I think they're not quite sure what to do with the remake, because I don't think they think it was successful. Right. They don't want to. Last I heard from them, they don't really think that's a successful take on the character, and I don't disagree. Yeah.
Do you think the danger with a lot of these remakes today is that they are either too precious or not precious enough with what made the first one any good?
Well, I don't know. I think it's very difficult. Sequels have been traditionally difficult to get something as good as what excited everybody the first time.
Right.
And, you know, it's only been recently that some of these franchises have kind of worked into a different rhythm, wherein they kind of are the same characters coming back again and again, and every 2 years, and we like it. And that's worked a little bit here for a while, which is why we keep getting so many of them. I would say the Fast and the Furious is a really good example of it. It's almost like movies, with franchise movies that work well now are almost like TV shows. It's like a family that comes together every 2 years, and you know, they solve a problem, and then you get to be with them again. And that's why I think the Avengers those movies work that way too.
Right.
In a way.
So the whole recurring characters, recurring villains, recurring plot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why, you know, TV is like that. TV was traditionally like, hey, every week I want to spend 30 minutes or an hour with these people I kind of know.
Right.
And so the movie franchises that work seem to have that kind of reset to them or whatever, or that's worked for a while. You know, the last Guardians of the Galaxy comes out 2 years later, and it doesn't really seem as fresh as the first one for some reason. I think it's because it's very difficult to come up with really good stuff fast.
Yeah.
And you know, there's not like a formula for it. So, you know, probably if they'd worked on that another 2 years,
yeah,
they would have been better. But on the other hand, they probably wanted the money that they could get out of it now. So,
sure. And I mean,
I think that.
Yeah. And I mean, the trend is, isn't it? Like, if a film's ridiculously or successful or surprisingly successful, that they're more inclined to rush a sequel into production as fast as they can.
They are, and you can understand why. They got to make their next quarter.
Yeah.
And they have their slots and they have their plans, and they want to go with things that work. And you know, and it's probably better to strike while the iron is hot, etc. It's just, you know, sometimes it's not as easy. Marvel has done a pretty good job of turning out pretty high quality stuff, on a regular basis, I guess. Some of them I really like. Star Wars has done okay that way. Pixar seems to take longer, and they seem to do better doing that.
Yeah. Like you said, it's if they sort of took the time sometimes to come back and to not sort of set the release date and put the posters out and then have them rush like hell to make the movie, we might have probably seen some better sequels.
I think so, probably, if there was more. I think the real trick of the movie business, and I'm just talking about movies now, is the development of the scripts.
Right.
And it's a very difficult thing, as you know, you've written yourself. It's hard to write a script.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get one right. And so I think that kind of not knowing when you can have it ready to go is a big problem for people who want to run a regular business, you know.
Right.
So I think that things get pushed that way. But yeah, if people would emphasize the script a little more if they could until they can. And sometimes they do. I mean, I know that they struggle to, you know, get these scripts right. In general, they're writing to some kind of deadline, though.
Yeah.
I know when they were working on one of the Spider-Mans, not the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, it was just like, let's hire another writer.
Right.
You know, and they were just trying to move it along as fast as they could.
Right.
It still took them 2 years.
Yeah. How do you feel as a writer about these movies now sort of being written by a team of writers? They obviously get in a bunch of writers and have them come out with...
Well, it's like the television model being brought into the movies, where they have a room of writers and they break them down. And, you know, hey, I was in a room for not a movie, but for a video game briefly, and just kind of as a observer, and it was kind of fun to hang around and talk about things with people. But you know, I've done a little of this stuff in consulting with the, you know, I mean, not really, but you know, I've been around with some groups involved with the Air Force and some other government stuff, and they do that too. They have this way of having a bunch of people come together, a bunch of experts come together in a room, and then you talk about it, and you say, here are the problems, and we're going to divide you into a group of four, and groups of four, and then we're each going to give you a problem. We're going to come back at 3 o'clock, and you're all going to come together, and you're going to come at 5 o'clock, and you give us the answer. And you know what? I just think it's a bunch of bullshit, you know? It doesn't really work that way, but they want it to work that way.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's kind of where this goes, and you probably get a little out of it.
Yeah.
But then, then you still takes you a while to come to you. You need somebody to be able to come in the next day and go, hey, you know that thing you're talking about? Here's why it's completely wrong. Why don't we do this? But that kind of process doesn't go for that because it's based on speed or something. Anyway, if it works, it'd be okay with me.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that works is fine.
Yeah, because I mean, it seems like today, like every time I read about new, because they're now in the business of, it seems like they're in the business of building universes today. We've got the Marvel universe, and the Universal wants to rebuild the Universal monster.
Oh yeah, the Dark Universe.
Yeah, so it seems like, and you hear like, oh, they've got a bunch of screenwriters together that's going to plot out the whole thing. And I mean that I haven't seen it, but by all accounts, that new Mummy picture wasn't that hot or didn't do too well. You know,
No, it did not. It did not. It doesn't seem to work. You know, again, I think the new Transformer was done with one of those writer rooms, and it's probably going to make money, but it didn't make money in the U.S. the way it was, you know, the way people wanted it to. So,
but don't you think? Don't you think the hazard of that is the old adage, too many cooks spoil the broth?
Yeah, I actually think I'm not hopeful of it. It doesn't seem, it seems to me that, you know, it really takes the, you know, hard work of one or two people and maybe some other people along the way to sit down and you know, figure out what's working and what's not. And I don't know if you can make it go faster by throwing more monkeys into the room, you know, but they're going to try, because obviously it's the same reason. They have a schedule, and they have to hit these release dates, and so it's a problem. Yeah. And I'm not sure. It's almost like we need more good screenwriters.
Yeah. But, I mean, probably back when you started, I mean, it seems like they used to go for, like, screenwriters where that was their strength. I mean, like, you know, if you and just coming off of RoboCop, they go, well, he writes good stuff like that, or like Shane Black, you know, when he was hot, you know, oh, he writes a good action picture. We want a good action picture writer. Let's get him, you know, instead of this whole, you know, let's get as many writers in the room as possible and watch them, you know, fight it out until one of them emerges with a bloody pencil and a script. You know.
Or I don't even know if they fight it out. I think that really what happens is you have somebody in there who's got to write it, and they probably care more than anybody else. Yeah. And then you got a bunch of other people who don't have to write it, so they can just have their ideas.
Yeah.
And then that's that. So you don't really have to, the people who are having to come up with the ideas are not much better than development executives, in that they don't have to write it. They don't have that much skin in the game.
Yeah.
And I think that can make, you know, a lot of, you know, if you have to write it, you can say a lot of things in a room. And I've been in a room where people have said a lot of things, and I've said a lot of things. Then you go back and you have to sit down with it in a lonely little room, and it doesn't work out the same way it did in that room that was filled with people. Yeah. You know, it's lonelier too. You know, you're all by yourself. But I think that's why this idea, it probably helps to have more ideas at first. Eventually you still end up with somebody having to work out a story bone by bone. Yeah. Probably by themselves.
So anyway, after the whole RoboCop experience, you re-teamed with Paul Verhoeven for a movie that I found, when it came out, it seems like it didn't get as much love as it should have, but now it's being looked back upon more fondly, and that's Starship Troopers.
Oh, you're talking about Starship Troopers?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, I think. I think that's true, and thank God for it. It was, again, another incredibly long and difficult sort of journey to make that movie. And when it came out, it was kind of a little bit less than you wanted it to be, particularly if you had been working on it all that time. Yeah. Certainly for the studio. Yeah. But, you know, it was immediately a big hit in home video, which was, I hate to say it, just kind of coming into its own then. And it was, I guess, enormous. It just sold a lot of damn videos. Yeah. And so so more and more people saw it that way. it's played on television quite a lot, and a lot of people have seen it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has over a long period of time, it has kind of grown into its own little cult, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
It's sort of. I think also, I was talking to Paul recently, and he was saying, with some bemusement, that the his science fiction movies were staying relevant longer than his other movies.
Yes.
So I think it's the genre that gives you a little, you're talking about the future, and if it's something that people relate to, then they kind of keep going back to it, and they find more in it, or they enjoy it, or they use it in a conversation, or there's a lot more news stories now about Starship Troopers as the Air Force is now kind of starting in America. The Air Force is, I saw an article the other day, they're starting a kind of a branch of the Air Force that's going to be about space work and space stuff, but the press likes to call it Starship Troopers. Every time there's an advance, a technology advance up with cops, or a thing about cops and armor, they call them RoboCop.
Right.
There's a police car that's in Dubai that's autonomous and can drive around and scan things, and they're called RoboCop cars.
All right. Cool.
Somehow, that stuff, the movies about the future seem to find a useful place in the press.
Yeah. I think I remember you saying in an interview or one of those documentaries that really you were writing. I think it was for RoboCop, that you were writing a funny movie or a satire disguised as a genre picture. Do you think that when you, like you were just saying about how the genre helps you, you're not really, you're intent on saying something, but disguised as genre, it helps get it across easier?
I think so. I mean, listen, the beginning of Starship Troopers occurred on a walk that Paul Verhoeven and I were taking sometime in the end of 1986 in the hills, near Pittsburgh, where we were shooting. And we were talking on a Sunday about things we would want to do. And, what would we do if we did another movie? Because we got along pretty well in that movie. And he at one point said, I've always wanted to do a movie about a bunch of kids in Nazi Germany, in 1935 or so, before you knew it was bad.
Right.
Just when it was happening, and it was exciting.
Right.
And I think that he said, I like that idea too. I thought, yeah, because that's really interesting. They didn't know they were doing something that was wrong. They just were doing something. They were caught up in something exciting.
Right. Yeah.
And at some level. And I said, at the time, I said, yeah, but they'll never let us make a movie about 1936 Poland or 1936 Germany. About from that point of view. Well, that's not the way a dramatic movie would. It'd be hard to make that movie. We both felt. Right. But it was not long. A couple years later, and I suddenly, around the time Jurassic Park was coming out, that was being done by Phil Tippett, who had done the Ed 209 stuff, stop motion stuff in RoboCop. That I realized, we could do all these kind of bugs and things. We could make Starship Troopers as a movie, and it would be that movie. It would be about, I'm going to join up and all that kind of stuff. So if you look at Starship, you see it's about a bunch of kids in high school, and there's an excitement about joining up and going off into the world, and that plays into this thing where suddenly you're at war, and it was very inspiring to me to look at it that way, and Paul, I kind of knew Paul would like that too.
Right.
Just in general, that it would appeal to him, and it did. Eventually he came on board, and off we went on that one.
But I've noticed today, like I noticed recently on social media, they recut a trailer for Starship Troopers and gave it.
Yeah, I saw that. That was
you did, yeah. Gave it some. As one commentator said, gave it some the gravitas that he thought it needed upon its initial release. How do you feel about that? Do you think the marketing...
Well, at some level there's a winking going on with it being a giant B-movie from another time.
Sure.
Almost like what it is.
Yeah.
And that's what we were doing, and what Paul and I were kind of like, we were pushing B-movie stuff. We were pushing the vulgarity a little bit.
Right.
We were kind of trying to hit this tone of manufactured entertainment from, I think it collectively came from our, well, he's 20 years older than I am, but our different views of B-movie culture. And what you started out saying is, are you hiding in genre so you can be taken more seriously?
Right.
And I think, you are trying to get away with something by doing this. So we'd never tell the studio we're making the movie that people pretty much accept Starship as.
Right.
They read the script and kind of felt like it was a military movie, maybe kind of like Star Wars or something.
Right.
And they didn't see it as, and they were amused by it too, because it's amusing. The kind of, where you're sort of saying it's a bit of a fascist state, but it's fun, it was edgy in that way for them.
Sure.
But I don't think that they understood it as completely as the movie we made where, about in the third act you realize the audience is asked to undertake the idea that their heroes might be the Nazis.
Right.
And it's pretty subtle, but that's the third act conclusion at some thematic level is, have they all become fascists? Which, of course, we decided by the end of that movie that the theme of the movie was war makes fascists of us all. And it really, really does. I mean, it's fascinating that we arrived at that. And now that I look at war and warlike behavior and warrior culture, it's just impossible that it doesn't make us into that. It's the only way you win, right? By becoming tougher and less human in your and more certain. I don't know. It's amusing. What would we do without human folly? Folly, I ask myself. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. I personally loved Starship Troopers. I saw it in the cinema when it came out. I personally wasn't one of those people that have grown into it. I thought it was great from the beginning. And I look at like Paul's movies like RoboCop and Starship and even Total Recall, and how they remade Total Recall as well. Now, I mean, they've applied a certain slickness to it because now with the movie making toys they have now, they can do pretty much what they want. But that wasn't really the factor that people enjoyed, I think, when these movies initially came out. Like if they remade Starship.
Right, that's a very interesting point because we couldn't do power armor, which to some people who like Starship Troopers, the book, just think that's how could you make a movie called Starship Troopers without power armor? But we just couldn't do it because we didn't have the money and the way to do it. The CGI that we had was about all we had, and yet now we can do everything. Yeah. If we have enough money, and the question is what do you want to do? Yeah. And it's interesting because here's what's interesting about Starship. I know they're going to try to remake it sometime. Yeah. And they keep trying to remake it as far as I can hear because I'm not really involved in it. Right. They keep wanting to make it more real or more benign or something. Yeah. But so they're basically they say they're doing the book. Right. But the book is just an argument. It's not a story. Right. And so I have a feeling that they're going to pimp off the original story, but that they're going to try to make it a little more. I'm not sure what. I mean, I don't know how. I guess what I'm saying is, I hope somebody can find a way to make that movie interesting for them. But I don't know. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to. It's like there's not that much of a story there if you don't do what Paul and I kind of did with it, which was to take this idea and flip it around and tell this kind of military propaganda piece. It is in its own way a piece of propaganda, so we treated it as propaganda. Right. But to treat it as something real might be, I don't know, you're going to have to make up a new story for it. Yeah,
because, I mean, your whole angle and the idea that it was, the whole idea that people that are under an oppressive regime don't really know it. They're all, and plus you've got the B-movie angle. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought, this is great. This is like an old-fashioned, sort of cheesy B-movie made for a big budget, which was fantastic. But also the idea, as you were saying when you were talking with Paul, about how people living in Germany while the whole thing's going on. To the outside world, what they're doing is terrible, but to the naive youth that are there, like you said, it's all wonderful, and they buy the propaganda, because like, oh wow, this is a great idea, yeah, become a citizen, serve, all this sort of stuff. I mean, that's a great angle, and I don't know if making it, like you say, I don't know if making it sort of, with this whole like gritty realism that they want today, this dark and, let's make it real, let's make it, I mean, people go to the movies for escapism, not realism, don't they?
Well, I mean, I think in this case, the world, which is a meta world a little bit, in that it is purposefully trying to kind of look like an old-fashioned or a cheaper, I would say, high-end 50s sci-fi, like Them or something like that.
Yeah. And
it has those values in it. I mean, we were pretty aware. It was written in the late 50s. We set the military look was kind of set as a World War II look in a way, because we figured that's what it would be. So if you look at the ships, they're not like really cool looking, and they're not really like George Lucas stuff. They're made of big funny shapes and stuff like that.
Yeah, very industrial.
Industrial look shapes and stuff like that.
Right.
And so, I mean, I think what's really interesting about the movie is we created a world that you would accept. It's nonetheless not a real world. So if you make this more gritty and more real, it's probably just a different kind of a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to do Private Ryan, I'm not sure if you can do Private Ryan with bugs,
Right.
I'm not sure you can make that, I mean, maybe you can. You can do a little of that if you wanted.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting problem.
Yeah. It'd just be a very different film. It wouldn't have the tongue in cheek at all.
Well, in a weird way, it would be closer to something like the Clone Wars.
Right.
Battle sequences. I mean, the Clone Wars I thought were actually the only part of the movie I liked.
Right.
And they remind me a little of Peckinpah in a way.
Right.
But, the question is, how long can you sustain that?
That's true. Yeah.
So anyway.
Or a bit like that. What was?
I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what they do with that if they remake it. I kind of wish they didn't. I think at one point I decided that it was very good. Even when we were making it at an R, and people wondered if that was smart, and probably would have made more money if you could have toned it down a little to a PG-13, maybe.
Right.
But I kind of felt like no one's ever going to make a movie like this, or not for a long, long time.
No.
And so it made it worth it to me in a way to make it tougher and stranger, and maybe not as commercial as we would have liked.
Right. Do you think that if they did it today, they might try for something more like that Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise movie?
Well, I mean, did you like Edge of Tomorrow? I did. I thought it was good. And I'm bored with power suits now.
Right.
That's just me. I thought they did. I thought that they did them about as well as you could do them. Cameron's done a version of them, a different version for Avatar that's also pretty good.
Yeah.
Maybe someone will come up with some amazing, mecha ballet.
Yeah.
That in the future that we will like, but we'll see. I'm not as, and probably because I've been, bouncing around, no pun intended, with this idea of power suits for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm just not as interested as I once was.
Yeah. But so Troopers went on to 2 and 3, which you directed, but in between there, I noticed Anacondas, Hunt for the Blood Orchid. How did that come your way?
Oh, that was an interesting studio job that Michael and I decided to see if we could work together again, and we went up for this job at Sony where they sort of knew me and him, and we, they had a competition for like a good idea for this, and they saw it as a franchise at that point that they wanted to stage. So we wrote it. It was a little bit uninspiring in some ways,
right?
Particularly because I generally try to make things a little bit funny,
right, in
some way, and they didn't want that, and I think that's until Get Out came along. Everybody said, you can't be funny and do horror at the same time. And I think they were wrong, but that made the script particularly uninspiring.
Right.
And I do think I learned that, it's just not enough. It's not much fun. It's fun to write something that you like and have it turn out, and get it good and have it turn out good if you can. But writing something that you don't like or writing something that someone else likes isn't that satisfying, and it doesn't feed itself very well. So, I must say, I at a certain point, I didn't care whether they made that movie or not.
Right.
And then they did. They went and made it, and that was great. I'm glad they made the movie, and a guy named Dwight Little directed it, and he did about as good a job as you could.
Right.
They made it for a certain price. Probably, if you had a little more money and a little better actors, you would have had a better movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It may. I'm not sure. I ended up saying to my kids that I thought maybe I wasn't the guy to write a giant rubber snake in the jungle movie. But someone else could have probably done it better.
There's a good title for a movie there. The Giant Rubber Snake in the Jungle.
Yeah, it's pretty. It shows you where I come from. It's probably too much from a movie perspective or something. Anyway, I think for me, the struggle as a screenwriter is always to try to, to find out what a story is really about, and you're limited when it's really about a giant rubber snake in the jungle.
Yeah. Well, that came in between the Starship 2 and Starship 3, which you directed. What was the directing?
I did, yeah. So the Starship Troopers direct-to-video movies have been a little cottage industry that a few people have gotten to direct on, and now I've kept my health insurance going with. So I'm very grateful to Sony for that. But I did, someone finally convinced. They had two things happen. They'd made a lot of money with the otherwise not wonderful, in my opinion, from a script standpoint, Starship Troopers 2. And then there were some production problems, and we didn't quite get to shoot the whole movie. And, I think the movie had pretty good bugs in it, for sure. And Phil Tippett, the director, did well for having a very short schedule. And, I guess he had under $6 million to make that movie. We had. I was on it, and I wrote on it. But it was actually quite an education for me. I'll tell you, I learned a lot about movies from that experience, and helped me but nonetheless, Starship 2 made a lot of money for Sony, and it was sort of at the height of no one knew it then, but kind of at the height of the video business,
right?
The home video business. And so they decided that they should make another Starship Troopers 2 movie, and maybe if it was better, they'd make even more money. And to make it better, they were willing to spend some more money, and then they came to me, and I said, well, I would like to do this and that, and they for some reason they said yes, and I wanted to bring Casper Van Dien back into it. Right. I said I wanted to write a movie about Johnny Rico, and they said okay, and they basically let me do whatever I wanted. I wasn't crazy, and the movie was quite again very difficult, quite an ordeal, but it went well. Nobody killed anybody, and it all got shot sort of. So you cut a movie together out of it, and I didn't get fired, which was probably my big ambition. I shot in South Africa. It was really a great experience to shoot in South Africa. I had a giant crew and a lot of people who tried very hard to do things. We probably didn't have enough money. Script probably wasn't as good as it should be, but we had a good cast and we had a very good crew and a good DP. So for me, it was a really great experience of directing a movie, and I now know what it is to direct a movie, which has changed how I feel about movies a little bit, or how I feel about directors of movies a little bit, because it's a really, really complicated job, and I think that most people can't do it. Probably me included. It's almost like sometimes I was sitting around talking the other day with an old friend, and he said, I can't decide if directors are born. Right. And I said, I think they are born. Right. I think the really good directors are born. That they can do something other people can't. Right. And that maybe you can't really learn to do, or not everybody can learn to do. As I say, it's a complicated job, so they're probably operating visually and maybe in other ways just ahead of most people. They see things in a different way.
Do you think it's
sort
more...
of the way, yeah.
Do you think with a director, it's, I mean, there are a lot of writer directors as well, but do you think the sole directors, do you think their strength lies in not so much just getting the pages on the screen and getting stuff shot, but actually crafting those images? Like not...
Well, I think I think there's no one way to do it.
Right.
But Paul Verhoeven, I would say, shot the pages that we prepared moving into production. We shot the script, and it was interesting to me because I'd been around movies before that, and I didn't realize how lucky I was for a little while because what I wrote and what we all agreed on, the producer and director and I, was more or less what happened. And there was nothing where I thought, well, somebody ruined that or ruined that. I mostly looked at it and go, gee, I wish that mine were better. Sometimes I got very lucky and have gotten lucky when a good actor will come up with a good line, and I'm smart enough to go, that's a good idea, let's do that. And so that was, my sense of it is that you use the script. The director should use the script to put everything down as it's going to happen. If he gets a good idea when he's shooting it, that's fine.
Right.
And Paul was there. That's because that's the way Paul did it. Now, other people are more intuitive and they see things in different ways, and so it's not all rules apply. But I do think that the more you prepare yourself and vet what you're doing in a process, the more the director does that, the better for me. It just seems like it becomes richer and stronger, and and I guess I'm very influenced by having worked with Verhoeven. But what he was able to do with my material is now more and more I realize how lucky I was. I always thought I was lucky, but not everybody can do that or see it that way and pull it all together so that the performances and the blocking of the camera and the movements of the people are all working in support of that in such a great way.
Right. Well, it's like I once... sorry. It's like I once heard... it's like I once heard, I think it was Peter Gruber say that once you hire a director, you've bought that eye, you've bought a particular vision.
What I would say now as a writer, I understand, is I don't want the director to do anything that they don't believe in or they don't want to do.
Right.
It's just not in my interest, and they won't do a good job of it if they do. They have to understand it, and they have to do something they want to do. Right. It's kind of like raising a child. I mean, seriously, you have to let them do what they're going to do.
Yes.
If you try to say, you can say to a director, hey, how about this? You can pitch them an idea, and if they like it, great. But if they don't like it, you can't get them to do it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't get them.
Ultimately, they're going to be
any good.
Yeah. Ultimately, they're going to be what they want to be, right?
Well, you have to find the right person to work with. You know, they have to like the script, and they have to you have to think we have a shared vision.
Yeah.
And you would then have to get along, and then you would have to have a shared vision about how to work. And I think I was lucky in kind of meeting up with a director who saw that I could be helpful to him in the process, and we were able to work together pretty much hand in glove on two pictures in a way that I think served the picture quite well. Not everybody does it differently. And in America, the writer is not usually on the set. Right. Might be changing a little bit. It was in America. It's always the TV. In TV, the writer runs everything, and the actors can't say any words but the ones that are on the page. And in features, the director runs everything, and the actors can make up their own lines.
So were you on the films you worked with Paul? Were you present throughout the production, or just beginning and end?
I was usually there writing or working. On the first one, I was rewriting the movie as we went, just to keep going and make it better as we came to things, whether they were locations that were suddenly locked down, and how can we make it work better here? And I would get that in the script, but I would also, this actor we cast is great, and this line will be better this way. And so I kept nudging it along and making it better in the process of that. So it was all for the good. On Starship, the script had been worked on for so long that it was pretty lost, and so I more functioned as the not the official AD. We had great ADs on that show, but I was what was known as the European AD, and I would run around and make sure the director got everything he wanted, and everybody knew what the director wanted, and try to troubleshoot when things went wrong, which somehow they often did.
Right.
But that was part of the creative experiment there.
Right. Tell us about the new Starship Troopers, Trader of Mars.
Well, Trader of Mars is a piece of anime,
Right.
an anime story which is animated by the Japanese master of mecha, Shinji Aramaki. And Shinji is well known for Appleseed and other anime he has participated in, and he has now done 2 Starship Troopers animes. The last one I had nothing to do with, and I think they were unhappy about that, so they asked me, they came back to me and said, we want to do another one, even cheaper, but Shinji really wants to do another one. They want it to be a good one this time, and do you have a story? And I said, well, I kind of do have a story, but it involves, I really want to, I said, and I really want to use Casper for the voice, and I also want to get Neumeier back so she can reprise her Dizzy character.
Right.
And they said, really? Dizzy's dead. And I said, well, I have a way to go. Yeah. And so one thing led to another, and I agreed to write this for them as an anime script. And it was good that I sort of had a notion of the story because they wanted it immediately.
Right.
And they just they shot it about as fast as I wrote it. But there was, at times it was interesting because we didn't have the best, it wasn't even just that we couldn't sit around and communicate. We just didn't communicate that much. Somehow being in Japan and being here and having to have everything translated meant that the communication between us was a little odd at times. And so the movie came out in a very interesting way. But what's funny to me is that, the story tracks and everything, but I used to watch anime movies and think, gee, if only this, I could fix this, I could fix that. Oh, the story would make better sense if you did this and that. So I had this sort of notion that I could fix an anime story, make a good anime story that I could track and follow. And I realized that the people who were making it didn't follow those rules. And so they don't care about the way the story tracks exactly the same way I do in that world, in that group of people. And it sort of came off more like, it came off as like, oh, this is like an anime film in that way too. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Right.
But there's almost a different storytelling value between the Japanese culture of anime and the American culture of movies or whatever.
Right.
So the story sometimes doesn't work the way I want it to, but I think it works in a way that is proper for anime.
Right. Yeah. Oh, well, that looks.
I don't know. Are you an anime fan?
Oh yeah. I mean, I like all the classics, of course. Ghost in the Shell, Akira, Ninja Scroll. I really love that series Berserk. I don't know if you ever saw that. That was a great.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. Did you see what did you think was wrong or right about the Ghost in the Shell movie?
I think that most people expected a live-action version of the original film, and they didn't get it. And I think that's the big thing. It'll be the same if they ever finally do this Akira film that's been slugging its way around Hollywood for a long time. I think if they go too far away from the source material, particularly with the devoted fans anyway, I mean, for people who don't know, for people who aren't familiar, then obviously it's just another sort of science fiction-y, action-y picture. But for the devotees, I think that they go, oh wow, that's going to be really cool to see a live action version of the anime. But the problem is when they were doing the promotional stuff that was coming out, they were showing shots that were pretty much shot for shot with the anime, so people were hopeful. But of course, when the final product came out and found like, oh geez, they used a bit of that story and then a bit of something else and a little bit of the the sequel that they made called Ghost in the Shell Innocence, which came out.
Right.
So yeah, I just think the downfall was too far away from, you know, I mean, it's weird. Fans are funny. Fans of stuff are funny. They want they want what they like or what they liked, and they want to see that, but they want to see it somehow like live action's going to make it different. I don't know. It's a weird thing.
So in other words, the idea of making it more real, live action, is what they think that there's going to be. They're going to get more out of that than they do.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
it was
probably right.
It was like when I was a kid and I heard there was going to be a Masters of the Universe movie. Now, I love Masters of the Universe as a kid. And when I heard, oh, wow, a live-action movie, that's going to be fantastic. And a lot of people don't like it. I personally do, even though, you know, I know now, knowing the mechanics of filmmaking, that okay, they had a budget and that's why they kept them on Earth rather than do the whole thing on the alien planet. But I mean, it was still sort of marvelous. Like, wow, that's you know the live action version. It had sort of an aura around it, and I think it still does. Only problem is when, like I say, when they stray, sort of when it's not the film that they loved, and it's some sort of hybrid of like, oh, that it looks and sounds and feels like Ghost in the Shell, but it's not. It's not the same. It's not the anime now. So it's weird. It's like a fine line that I think screenwriters and filmmakers walk. Like, how much do you make it a carbon copy, and how much do you do a live action version which is inspired in a lot of ways and is sort of visually similar, but it's not exactly the same. Like, how much? Like, it's a real. I don't know.
You'd have to really know. You'd have to really get the essence of something.
Yeah. And I think that's.
You would have to change it.
Yeah.
But not lose the essence.
It's like we were talking about earlier. Like, the thing that makes something great, like the original RoboCop and the remake. And like, I feel that they just completely lost what made the first one a good movie. But then again, the new movie isn't the old movie. It can never be the old movie. As much as people would want the old movie back again, just watch the... as I say, just watch the original if you're not happy. But, you can't... That's why I think sometimes it's a mistake to try and just stick with the same plot from the original film and not try some new plot that involves, a guy becoming, a RoboCop and eventually like a Pinocchio type story, rediscovering his humanity, and try that in a different form, but don't stick with the same plot, because you're never going to do it as well as it's been done. Like, lightning's already struck. Now we're just playing with the thunder.
Well, I agree with everything you're saying. I really do, and I think that you can't redo it the same way. And I've always tried to change it up a little bit. Like on the Starship Troopers movies, in a way, I was never trying to hit the same ideas as we did in the first one. I was trying to have it be part of something that could work in that world, and I was trying to, hit some notes about militarism and, the human condition, fewer, I would say, in 2 than I did in 3. But that's about it. I tried to make it seem like it was in that world, but I also I knew I didn't have the money to do big giant sequences or anything like that. So, I knew I couldn't compete at some level. It's sort of a bore to try to compete with yourself.
Yeah.
Also, you should do different things.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough, it's a tough gig, like always. Like, once you've come out with a hit, and people, I think I once heard Kevin Smith was talking to Richard, what's his name? Richard Kelly, who directed Donnie Darko. He said, "Aren't you?
Right, sure.
Yeah, aren't you afraid now that people are just going to want Donnie Darko all the time? You know, no matter how much he wants to do
Well,
other
he
stuff.
probably.
Yeah.
That's such an amazing piece of work,
Yeah.
and probably they do want it all the time. And
Yeah.
probably hitting that balance, if you hit in that, is hard to do. Too bad. I really like that stuff, but that movie is kind of miraculous.
Yeah,
and Donnie Darko.
yeah. I mean, it goes back to the old adage, like when it all comes together right and it's successful, how it happened is a mystery. You know, as much as you can cast the actors that you want and you get the right director and good cinematographer and you've got the script well written and you've got a good producer and you've got all these elements, when that all works, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I've actually seen that. I think that kind of happened on RoboCop.
Yeah.
And I think that what happened there was, everybody wanted something. Is the best I've heard now from a few. Phil Tippett once said, "Oh, everybody needed something on that movie," and it was like, it's true. I needed my first movie.
Yeah.
John Davison needed a new movie. He was a producer, and he hadn't had a hit for a while since his first movie.
Right.
Paul Verhoeven had this amazing career in Europe, and then his first American English language picture, as it were, Flesh and Blood, tanked. So he needed to do something.
Yeah.
And I think everybody was working very hard together in a way that they could only do that one time.
Yeah.
And when we worked together again 10 years later, it was a little different because we didn't all need it the same way, or we didn't need the same things. And so, whatever. But I mean, I think the other thing that happens is if you have a group of people who kind of have good communication with each other, that can really help.
Do you think?
And I think we had that on both those movies.
Yeah. Do you think too? It's what makes something great sometimes is the hunger, like you just said. Like when you're a young screenwriter or a young director, and you've finally gotten that first. Oh, this is my first, like you said, my first movie. So you're hungry, you're eager to please. Like, yeah, I can't screw this up. I've got to give 150, 200%.
Yeah, I think, and you're trying. There's a certain power in ignorance that way. You're trying really hard, and you're doing it to the senses.
And then once you've
I don't know. I really think it comes down to need. In other words, some people have bigger appetites than others, but if you need to do that, you'll keep doing that.
Yeah.
If you need to succeed, and if you need to, make another movie, you're going to keep.
You got to keep the fire burning.
So at that level. Or something, yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy, I think, and at least it has for me in these things. Get something going and make something, somehow make something happen.
Yeah.
And then it really helps if you have smart people you're working with who you can talk to.
Sure.
So that, I'm really lucky with Verhoeven and the producer John Davison on RoboCop and Starship. Those guys were really good.
Yeah.
So I was a lucky writer that way. I had some smart people to work with.
Awesome. So anything really cool for Ed Neumeier on the horizon you can talk about, or?
Well, I'm writing a script right now. I'm not supposed to talk about, but it is kind of cool. So to be revealed later. I'm actually happily working along here in the movie business, believe it or not, which is a little more limited than it used to be, maybe.
Yeah.
And so I have nothing to complain about except that I'm a screenwriter and screenwriter.
So what genre? Can you say what genre you're working in? Is it science fiction again, action?
It's what you would expect. I think it's what you would expect from me.
Okay.
It is science fiction.
Well, okay, very cool.
But the Robin always sings the same song. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, that's cool.
That's what Bertolucci said, I think.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, we at Podcasting Softly and fans all over the world of Ed Neumeier, we look forward to the future exploits of you, sir. And
okay, well, we'll see. You never know how these things work. Yeah. Anyway, it's really a pleasure to talk to you. And
it is.
Go see Trader of Mars. Coming to a store near you, I hope. Or
I look forward to that. Yeah.